big-time safety at the University of Alabama. Murray Legg, welcome back to T-Town. I hope you're doing well.
I am. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Let's talk some Alabama football. You think about August the 13th. Let me carry you back to the 70s and those preseason camps under Coach Bryant. What was it like?
Well, it was an exciting time because everybody got back there hoping that they could prove a point, and the beauty about it was, everybody was back together as a team, and that was the most important part of what we were doing back then because Coach Bryant just stressed team, and everybody got back and everybody kind of got reacquainted, and that was the really great part about it.
Do you think there's a benefit these days that players stay on campus and they really don't go home during the summer?
Well, I think the real sad part about it is that the players today don't get to live in a dorm like we did. And when you live in a dorm for 4 years, then you develop friendships, you develop camaraderie, and you're all living there together on 2 floors. And so, these players today, they have to live off campus. They don't have a dorm that they live in. And to me, I'm just amazed at what coaches can do today to keep their team together when they don't have that camaraderie.
And I don't want to say this to sound bad, but I don't know if we're getting the same. We're getting a quality kid. Don't get me wrong, but even in our youth, I mean, I've got a daughter. I was raised different than what she's being raised. The kids now have better opportunities to get in trouble. I guess is what I'm saying. There's a lot of things that they're faced with. I don't know if I would be able to say no with some of the temptation the kids go through in their life. I'm talking about high school kids.
Well, it's funny that you said that because a lot of my teammates, we've all talked about it. When Coach Bryant has a film that's called Ain't Nothing But a Winner, and he talks about when he was coming up, there was really no alternatives. You either went to school and you tried to succeed or you did not. And then at the latter part of his career, he talked about there's so many other options for kids to do. And today there's even more options. But I think about social media. I think about all the things that are going on today. And I'm not so sure, and I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I'm not so sure that some of the players from yesteryear would have still been around if they had all the iPhones and the cell phones and everything that's going on now. I don't know if that would happen today because it was just a different time.
I want to talk about competition for a couple of minutes. We're talking with Murray Legg, a defensive back here at the University of Alabama for 3 years. Murray, how many games y'all lose when you were here?
I think we lost 6 total.
Yeah, see that's where Alabama football is now,
or 5. I think 5. So 6 counting one my freshman year. Yes, so 6 total.
So you understand the expectations of winning.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't acceptable to lose, and I guess you can probably put yourself in the shoes of these Alabama players that are right now 12-2 season last year. But it sort of ended on a sour note. You have guys that are talking about, man, we just didn't reach our goals last year.
Right. Listen, when you go to Alabama, you hopefully that they understand what the tradition is like. They understand what the expectations are. To be able to be recruited by Alabama is an incredible honor. I thought it was, and here I was. A slow guy back in the 70s. I was recruited as a quarterback and ended up playing defensive back. And I was honored at the fact that I got to start as a sophomore, as a safety, or I could have sat on the bench behind Jeff Rutledge and a couple others, at quarterback. So I think people who really understand Alabama tradition and Alabama history and Alabama football, I think that they understand that there is an incredible expectation. And you come there understanding that, but you also come there knowing that if you compete and you compete on a high level, that then you can be successful.
When I study Alabama football, the scholarship limit is 85 now, and I think it needs to be expanded a couple of spots with more additional games. I think it would be the health and the safety of the current players. I go back to study your teams that you were a part of, Coach Bryant's teams. They were a little larger. You had more talent. But I want to talk about competition for a couple of minutes because competition at times can disrupt your team. You got one guy side here and you got one guy's side here, but this guy will win the job, and it can disrupt that team chemistry. How did Coach Bryant prevent that from happening because there were so many talented players?
Well, I think the main thing is what Coach Bryant did. Coach Bryant would always tell you, I don't treat everybody the same. I treat everybody fairly, and he did, and he was fair to everybody. You know, some players he would probably coddle more, others he would be tougher on, but he treated everybody fairly. And as a player, all you want is have your coaches to treat you fairly. And as long as you're treated fairly, you have the chance to compete and you can perform. That's the main thing of what any athlete would ever ask is that they can compete for a job. And then if you go on the field and you prove that you're the best at your position, then you're going to start. So to me, competition breeds excellence, in my opinion, because, there are a lot of folks who were highly recruited who come to Alabama and they don't pan out. But then there's some who are less recruited, but they come there, but because they work very, very hard and they continue to improve, then they end up having the job over some people who are more highly recruited.
Let me go back and sort of study a little bit of this Sugar Bowl game. You had a pick on fourth down. It was late in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. It could have been early in the fourth quarter, but you had a major pick. What do you remember about that play?
Well, the pick, I hate to tell you that you're wrong in your history, but the pick was earlier in the game. But that game was, to me, what it taught me in that game was that our assistant coaches were incredible. Coach Ken Donahue, Coach Brother Oliver, all the coaches on defense. For us to go up against a Penn State team that was so incredibly talented offensively, and for us to be able to do what we did to hold them to 7 points, it's not really a testament to our ability, because in the secondary we started three guys who weren't real fast, and I was one of them. I was, okay fast, but not as fast as the other team's receivers. But then we had one player in Don McNeil who was just incredible, who went on to play for the Dolphins. And but the way that they taught us during the 2 or 3 weeks prior to that game, and the research that they did, and watching the film, and the way that they coached us up was an incredible thing. And I think back about that a lot, because I think it's helped me throughout my life, because Coach Bryant used to say, you don't have to be the best, but if you believe you're the best and you play like you are, then you can beat the best. And that's pretty much what we did that day, because if you look at their team versus our team, and if you want to take the roster and go person to person, they were probably a lot more talented than we were. But because Coach Bryant stressed teamwork and the way that we had worked so hard for 3-4 years leading up to that game, that's what made the difference.
We are talking with Murray Legg right now inside the game here in Tuscaloosa, and I'm always going to ask about the goal line stand. You were a part of that play, and it's one that I guess let's talk about the setup. You talked about it there with Don McNeil, but the second down play.
Well, the second down play, and I'm going to go ahead and say it right now for everybody to hear. That was my man, and I messed up. And what I thought is I called all the defenses on the defensive team, and I called all the secondary coverages. And I watched an awful lot of film because I knew that I was a signal caller. So I had to make sure that I watched more film than everybody. And when they lined up Scott Fitzke at tight end, who was their normal wideout, the only play I'd ever seen them run was a cross with the other tight end, and they would try to pick the back off, and then they would throw it to him. And so in my mind, I thought, I know what they're going to run. I'm going to cheat inside. He's going to try to cross the middle. I'm going to go around him. I'm going to pick the ball off and run 99 yards for a touchdown. I could see it in my mind. I already knew what I was going to do. Well, he takes one step forward and goes straight to the flat, which is not what I expected. But by alignment, I'm already a yard or two inside of him, and I can't catch up with him. And they throw it to him, and I dive to try to grab his feet. I can't catch him. And then Don McNeil makes probably, if you want to know my opinion, the most incredible play of that game. And he comes off his receiver in the end zone and comes up and makes the tackle on the foot line and knocks him out of bounds. And so, Wimp Sanderson likes to tell the story that I'm the one that made Barry Krause a hero. But
that's a great point. Okay.
But I was the one that, because I thought I was very cerebral and I could figure it out, I was going to outsmart them, but they outsmarted me.
And then on fourth down, you were part of the goal line stand, and I've spoke with Mike Goodman, and I must tell you, he's a class act. He said, I take a little pride that all the Alabama fans have my photo in their living room. And he handles it with a lot of class, but, you think about, you put yourself in his shoes, coming up inches away, from winning that game and a national title. And but you look at the confidence that your team had, that you believe that you could stop him, and the confidence to say, you better throw the football because you're not going to run it.
Well, Marty Lyons is the one who said that. And after the third down play, Penn State called timeout, and Chuck Fusina came to the line of scrimmage, and he was looking where they spotted the ball, and he was looking over towards the sideline of how far he was. And Marty had been with Chuck at the Kodak All-American team about a week or two prior to this game. So he'd got to know Chuck. And Chuck just happened to look up at Marty with this kind of strange look, and I was standing right there, and Marty said, "Chuck, you better pass because you're not going to run it in." And he did say that. And
what was the reaction from Penn State, though? I mean, did they give
Well, he didn't say anything because Chuck was really the only one standing there, and so all the other team was back in the huddle. So Chuck goes off to the sidelines, and what's funny is I've talked to a couple of I talked to Matt Barr, their kicker, several years later. We were at some function, and I cannot remember the function, but I was there. And Matt Barr told me, he said, they actually called a pass, and if you look at the tape, Chuck starts to run out on the field, and then Joe Paterno calls him back and changes the play to a run. And because I'm going to tell you, if they'd have thrown the ball, they would have scored. But our coaches gambled on the fact that Joe Paterno was so set in his ways, and he felt like that if he couldn't push it in a half a yard, then they didn't deserve to win. So Chuck came back out there and called the play. But if they'd have faked the play and just raised up and thrown to a receiver, there'd have been nobody there because 11 of us were coming right inside to try to stop the run. And so, it just worked out, and that's something I'll never forget, and I'm very honored to be a part of it. But it's just something that that you take away from it. You just think if he'd have faked the ball and thrown it, then we wouldn't have won the national championship.
This may be a sad part of the interview, but I'd love to be able to get your opinion. You also served on Coach Bryant's staff.
I did.
And you were assigned to develop the Liberty Bowl game plan to scout Illinois.
I was.
And develop a game plan. Can you talk about that for a couple of minutes?
Well, the sad part is that it was Coach Bryant's last game. And Coach Bryant would always assign a coach a game during the season. and this was my second year on the staff, and I hadn't been assigned a game, and I was kind of wondering, why. I mean, I know I was the youngest on the staff, but I thought, why hadn't I been assigned a game? And then when he assigned it to me in our staff meeting, I thought, holy moly, I'm now going to be responsible for Coach Bryant's last game. And let me just say this. I was responsible for putting together a plan, but the offensive coordinator in Mal Moore and the defensive coordinator in Coach Donahue, they took my suggestions and then they drafted their own plan. So it wasn't like the whole plan was my plan. So I can assure you of that. But I'll tell one story and I'll make it quickly.
Take your time. I mean, I'm like this is awesome. I mean, I'm just listening to you word for word.
Well, when I started coaching Coach Bryant in 1980, I was a graduate assistant, and then I was hired full time for the 81 and 82 season. But in 80, the very first game I ever coached, it was at Legion Field against Georgia Tech. Excuse me. And so I did not know, because as a player you don't know these things, I did not know that Coach Bryant was the only person who could ever substitute a player into a game. And so the other coaches set me up, and I didn't know that they had set me up. And we're in the first quarter of the game at Legion Field, and this was back when Alabama was on the east side of the stadium, and you were looking across the field up to the press box. And one of our safeties, I can't remember if it was Jim Bob Harris or Ricky Tucker, but one of them hit somebody and kind of pinched a nerve or something. And I was talking on the headset to Lewis Campbell, and I said, we need to get someone else in there. And Lewis goes, well, put Jim Bob or Ricky, whichever one who wasn't in there. He goes, put them in. And I didn't know that they were doing this to mess with me. And so I yelled for whichever one it was. I said, get in the game and get him out of there. He's hurt. And all of a sudden I hear Coach Bryant yelling, going, who put him in? And I'm going, and I'm talking to Lewis Campbell on the headset, and I said, Lewis, Coach Bryant's want to know who put him in. He goes, you mean you didn't ask Coach Bryant to, if it was okay? And I went, no, I didn't know I was supposed to. He goes, oh, yeah, you were supposed to. And anyway, he kept screaming, who put him in? And so this is back in the day where you didn't have cordless headsets, and you had the big, long black cord that fed back to a power feeder. So I was trying my best to walk as far away from Coach Bryant as I could. And then I heard Coach Bryant scream one last time, who in the blankety blank put him in? And I heard Coach Goostree, who was the trainer at the time, go, Coach Legg put him in, Coach Bryant. And about that time, I'm listening to Lewis Campbell on the headset, and Lewis is going, don't look now, but he's coming your way. And I went, what? He goes, he's coming your way. And Lewis is in the press box. I'm going, what do you mean he's coming away? He goes, he's 10 feet behind you. Oh, he's 5 feet behind you. He's right on you. And about that time, this giant hand grabs my shoulder and whips me around. He goes, did you put him in? I said, yes, sir, Coach. I'm sorry. I put him in. And after a few choice words, he says, I ought to fire you. He goes, as a matter of fact, you're fired. And he walks off. And I don't know what to do because I'm a first-year coach and I'm a graduate assistant. I don't know if I'm supposed to leave the field or what. And I can hear every coach in the press box over my headset laughing. So I look up across the field to the press box, and every coach is like falling on the floor laughing. And I said, Lewis, what are y'all laughing for? I said, I just got fired. And he said, well, welcome to college coaching, Murray. He goes, we've all been fired 2 or 3 times. And so that was my first game I ever coached with Coach Bryant. I got fired. So
amazing story. I've got just a little bit of time here. I want to ask just a really quick question. It
Sure.
may not be even possible to be a quick question, but Coach Bryant's final talk to the players. You remember that?
Do I remember it? There wasn't a dry eye in the locker room. Well, let me say this. His final talk to the players at the practice field the day before the game was where it got very emotional. Coach Bryant teared up. Coach Bryant cried. Every player cried. Every coach cried. It was something that I will never in my life forget. And because you're watching this man who was larger than life, and he was all of our idols, watch his lip quiver and tears roll down his cheek. And it was the most amazing thing. And and to follow up to my quick story about him firing me, in the first quarter of the game against Illinois, we had a safety named Rocky Coburn, who was a great kid, a hard player, and very small, but he would hit very hard. And Rocky hit their big tight end, and I could tell that Rocky got his bell rung. And so I turned to Coach Bryant. I said, Coach, I said, Rocky just got hurt. I need to substitute him. Is it okay? And he looks at me and he said, Murray, this is your game. He goes, you don't have to ask me again. And he walked off. And I said to Lewis Campbell, who I'm talking to, I said, did you hear that? He goes, yeah, I heard it. And I said, wow, Lewis, I said, it's truly over. He goes, yeah, it's over. And that was when it really hit me that Coach Bryant was done, because he would have never said, just substitute at will, don't worry about it. He'd have never done that. And so I hope that closes out this segment with something kind of interesting, because it was just something I'll never forget.